Good evening po sa inyong lahat. To those who are watching live there here in Facebook, kumusta po kayong lahat? Good evening there in the Philippines, and it is morning here in Washington, D.C. Magandang araw po sa ating lahat. Um, uh, it's I hope it's not as hot there in the Philippines as it is here in Washington DC kasi medyo summer na, medyo mainit na dito sa Washington DC. Turn on my camera here. Hello po. Hello Ma'am Andre, how are you?
I'm good po. Hindi, sana sabi nyo nga po, maganda yung panahon dyan. Dito maganda rin po. Gabi ngayon dito sa Pilipinas, pero ang kapwa po ay hindi nagsasawang magbibigay ng magandang programa sa ating mga kapwa Pilipino, mga kapwa kuguro. At
Yes, yes.
gabi, isa na namang batikang manunulat ang ating makakausap, makasama. So, siya po ay isang freelance journalist, public speaker, writer, researcher, and teacher of English and professional education subjects at West Visayas State University College of Education in Iloilo City, Western Visayas, Philippines. She has presented academic papers and researches on literature and cultural anthropology in several national and international conferences. She finished her Ph.D. English concentration in literary studies from Silliman University and her Master of Journalism from Bond University and QLD, Australia, all in full scholarship. Mga kapwa, mga kakultura, let us welcome to KULECTERATURA my good friend Dr. HAZEL P. Kulturang gabi po, Ma'am Hazel. Salamat sa
Opo.
accept ng invitation ng kapwa or kultura po.
Thank you po sa paunlak po ninyo sa aming paanyaya dito sa kapwa.
Welcome, Sir Alan, and magandang umaga sa mga kaibigan natin dyan sa Washington, D.C. and maybe other parts of the world who are listening in to KULECTERATURA. And good evening, Ma'am Andre. Maayong gabi. That's how we say it here in Hiligaynon. Ma'am Andre is a good friend of mine, and we just meet across the street once in a while. And so I could not say no to her offer. And besides, I think this is a wonderful group to share what I have learned in my dissertation, which I am sure you will certainly find very interesting.
Yes po. And it will be yun nga po, this event is usually watched though not live by many of our viewers po. They will watch it later on as a playback and hopefully even use it in their classroom as a way to introduce our culture and our literatures po to their students. And that's really what we're hoping for kasi most of our audience anyways are teachers. So yun, hoping that they'll use this in the future to their students po.
Okay, that's great because I have some new insights, new discoveries on Philippine folklore and mythology, which are not found in books. One of these days, if my schedule allows, I would like to write a book on this because, for example, when you say aswangs, you would think they are only on land. You would be surprised there are actually aswangs on sea.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And di ba when you say aswang, magiging wolf yan or maybe a bat or a wakwak. In Guimaras, they actually transform into stingrays. I will explain that later.
Oh, wow. Parang, wow, that's really interesting. I want to hear that one po. Yeah. Okay, so without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and show your presentation po. Do you see your actually?
Yeah. So this is it. So I will be talking on ang Palhi kag Mariit, the Uncanny, and the Accursed. Nandyan na po ba, sir? Can it be seen?
There we go po. Opo.
Okay, sige. So, when I was in Guimaras, when I was going around, I wondered how do the natives of the islands of Guimaras, who have a close bond with the sea, just like any other fishermen or fisher folk, making a living out of the sea, how do they explain tragedies or a night's bad catch or terrible weather? These are the things which stop them from making good livelihood. Why do their narratives repeat the words Palhi, which means accursed in English, and Mariit or Uncanny? And why should this even concern us? So you could see here on the right side the map of the Philippines. Then you see here a bigger word Visayas. And then Guimaras is just an offshoot of the island of Panay, actually. And here is Guimaras with its capital town of Hordan. Guimaras is a very beautiful island with white sand, lots of mango trees. In fact, they are celebrating Mangahan sa Guimaras this May. Just to give you an idea, it's about the size of Singapore, or maybe just a bit bigger, and not as cityfied as most places. It's basically a tourist destination. So I went here in 2019 for my dissertation about the narrative and non-narrative water lore collected in four selected communities that have marine protected areas, because Guimaras is basically a fishing community, and I generated the theory of water lore worldviews informing on MPA conservation using the critical folklore approach. Because when I heard Palhi and Mariit, and people were saying, "Oh, I'm not going to that place. It's Palhi. It's Mariit," and they said, and I said, "What's with Palhi and Mariit?" "Well, you'll be doomed. You'll be accursed. So I'm not going there, no matter how much fish you're going to get there." And the researcher in me said, "Wait a minute. This is non-narrative folklore, and maybe there is a connection with the way they conserve their resources. Do they have more catch because they believe in folklore? Is that even possible?" So that's how I was able to come up with this dissertation. Now, for those on the more academic side, allow me to give a brief background on water lore. So, for water folklore, from which I got my water lore, has four basic qualities to be called folklore material, according to Lopez in 2006. First, a story has to be told several times, repeated transmission, and told several times with multiple existence, which means if it's found in town number one, if it's found in Sibunag town in Guimaras, it also has to be found in San Lorenzo and has to be found in Nueva Valencia, because there are five towns. Does it mean it needs to be found in exactly five towns? No, it could be found in the next barangay. And this multiple existence also means people in this particular barangay or village are not aware that other people here on this side actually have the same story. Now, if you ask them, where did the story come from? Who was the originator of the story? None of them would be able to say so. Now, that is one basic quality of folklore material. There is a loss of identity of authors and creator. Now we go to the fourth quality, which is stability and change. You may say, how can something be stable and at the same time changes? When something is stable, what we mean here is the plot of the story is basically the same. What changes are, for example, the clothes a person wore, or maybe the color of the aswang. But basically, the story of who attacked who and who was the victim is the same. Now, all of these materials, all of this folklore, I collected from the four marine protected areas, which we'll find out here. We now abbreviate it into MPA. MPA 1 is Hordan Marine Turtle Sanctuary. and MPA2 is Taklong Island National Marine Reserve, and MPA3 is Tumalintinan Point, and MPA4 is Pamangkulan Sanctuary. You might ask me how I was able to get this. I asked the DENR, I said, with your more than 20 marine sanctuaries, please tell me which ones have the most number of storytellers. So I processed the data and I processed the data from the collected water lore. How was I able to process it? First, of course, I have the key informants listen in. These were transcribed, their narratives were transcribed from the audio, and then they were classified whether they are folk sayings or folk narratives, and then they were translated into English. After which, I did a textual analysis using an in vivo coding to discover themes and motifs related to water, marine creatures, habitat, and aquatic resources. Back in the day, they used to do manual coding, but with data this voluminous, that is next to impossible. So I had to do in vivo coding. So there are connections and interconnections and in the data and new insights based on the coding. And then I did some interpretations vis-a-vis critical folklore approach and generation of critical of community worldview. To get the critical folklore approach, one must have a deep background of what composes critical folklore. Basically, critical folklore is the kind of folklore that impacts in the community. Is it an economic impact? Is it an environmental impact? Which means any folklore or any form of literature that actually has an influence in the community and vice versa. So, in our case, this would be critical folklore. Now, the output of the study of the dissertation basically is grounded theory. So I use a qualitative content analysis type of research, applying the ethnographic method in the collection of primary data via key informant interviews and participant observation. I stayed a total of 10 days in Guimaras, but not straight. I would come back, let's say, a week or two after. I would go back to one town, one MP, and then to the next, and so on and so forth. It was very interesting, by the way. Dissertation, though full of danger because I had to ride on pump boats and I had a crew of two with me, and we didn't even have life jackets. So, never mind. It was what you would call in Tagalog buwis buhay kind of dissertation. But I tell you, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So, anyway, my key informants, four were from MPA 1, and uh, let me answer the story which was asked now. What got me interested into this research? Basically, because I'm a former correspondent of the Philippine Daily Inquirer, and at the same time, and I'm an avid reader of anything that has to do with Philippine literature and bits and pieces of folklore. So when I visited Guimaras, I saw how beautiful the island was, and as I went about as a journalist covering journalism, not literature nor folklore, I would hear people talk about stories of their places. So when I finally got I did my PhD in Silliman, I said I wanted to do something very different from the usual PhD of literary majors where they would compare novels. I said it so happened that we were taking this subject on Philippine literature, and our professor said, "You know what? Uh, most of our Filipino storytellers are dying out there around 80s, 70s, 90s, and no one has collected all of the folklore." And I said, "Oh, yes, indeed." And then while I was in the West Visayas State University library, I found a very old journal, 1981, which all talked about water lore. And so I said, wow, this is quite something new. I haven't read anything in modern related literature that has to do with water lore. So that's how I got interested with this particular dissertation. So While doing that, I talked to the DNR and thought about the possibilities, and thank God it did work out. So I had four informants from MPA1. So this is the whole map of Guimaras. That's Hordan Marine Turtle Sanctuary in Barangay Lawi. I had 12 from MPA2, if you're wondering how come there's so many of them, because Nueva Valencia happens to be one of the biggest town in Guimaras with the most number of fishermen. And they are mostly in Tacloban Island National Marine Reserve, and a national award-winning marine reserve. And four are from MPA3, which is to Malintinon Point in Barangay Suclaran in San Lorenzo, where there are amazing stories of the supernatural. And three key informants from MPA4, Pamangkulan Fish Sanctuary in Barangay San Isidro, Sibunag. The age of these key informants, by the way, is 42 years old to 84. Now, what since this topic is basically about sociocultural prescriptions, we need to define what are they. In general, they minimize the fisher folks' anxieties of making a living out of the sea. So, in a worldview laced with fear and danger, they would respond to the environment with these prescriptions, and this would include rituals, entreaties, and the practice of fishing diplomacy, among others. In this particular study, I found social prescriptions which revolve around rituals and entreaties. As for fishing diplomacy, Rolla and De Castro said this is the response of fishermen to the unseen supernatural forces that determine their livelihood practice. Rolla would say it's congeniality. They are trying to be friendly with these supernatural forces. So it's a relationship, as you would find out later, of give and take. Okay, for the rituals and entreaties, this comes from the study of Alicia Magos and Pabito in 1997. Now, the findings of my dissertation, would you believe I was surprised myself because it's a corpus or a body of 158 variants under several water lore categories. It took me nearly 2 years to do this dissertation, and the collection itself of the stories about 6 months, and the analysis and the thematic analysis and the coding about 6 months as well. So we find two general classifications of water lore. They are narrative water lore and non-narrative water lore. Narrative water lore was the most numerous at 145, broken down as follows: eight variants of etiological legends or narratives of origins, 89 variants of non-etiological legends, meaning supernatural tales, 32 variants of animal tales. This in itself should be a separate lecture because there are 22 on pawikans and 10 on sharks. And then there are 16 variants of genealogical tales. The non-narrative waterlore had a total of 13 variants of folk speech divided into 8 sayings. 5 on Palhi and 3 on Mariit and 5 on blessings. I'm not going to dwell on blessings, otherwise I'm going to go over time. What's very important is that I dwell on the Palhi and the Mariit because it is the title of this particular lecture, and gives you insights on why there is a general fear of making a living out of the sea, and what is being done about this fear, and how it actually impacts on conserving marine resources, surprisingly. But before that, let me entertain you a bit. No, I'm not going to sing. You've seen here an artist's rendition of the Katao. Okay. For those who know the Katao, it's a mermaid. Um, I forgot the Tagalog term for it. But anyway, the mermaid, some mermaids are generally beautiful, right? But the Guimaras Katao, according to one informant, Juanita de la Cruz of San Isidro in Sibunag, she said it has long hair and the lower half of its body is that of a human, which is opposite that of most of our mermaids, where the lower half is normally that of a fish. But she did not explain what the face looked like. And Juanita also said that the Katao is believed to kidnap people who disappear into the middle of the sea. So that is why sometimes when you go to Guimaras and people would talk about their relatives, either dead or have been lost and were not found, they would say, ah, si Manong Kwanto, ginkidnap sang Katao. Meaning, brother so and so was kidnapped by the Katao. He went fishing just one day and he's gone. Must have been kidnapped. And yes, there are 89 variants of supernatural tales, but I can only share with you three of the most interesting ones. Now, this is Sir Alan. This was the one I was telling you about earlier, the aswang with the were beast aspect. So this is just an illustration and concept by my friend Christian Garganero. The aswang of Kinmar, Taklong Island National Marine Reserve, seem to transform into winged local creatures like a bat, as well as a stingray. Now, where would you find in Philippine mythology and literature of an aswang morphing, shape shifting rather, into a stingray? So the story goes by my informant that he had a friend. So you see the characteristics of folklore. He had a friend who went fishing. It was dark, he said. Well, fishing is normally done at night. So he used his spear to hit this stingray who was hit here on the shoulder. And then he said the following day, when he docked on an island, he saw a stranger walking, limping away with a wound somewhere here. And he said, I could see from the shape of that wound that it was my spear that wounded him. Whether this is true or not, this story, because it's folklore, it can be made up, right? The story spread around the islands and barangays of Guimaras, and that's the story that goes around. This suggests a male aswang because the male aswang could also shapeshift into a stingray and vice versa. So, this is the interesting part of the were beast aspect of an aswang. And when you say aswang, you thought it would just be in the fields, in the mountains. Well, the story shows you that an aswang could also be found in the seas. Now, here's an interesting one. This is a photo of a dol tree in San Lorenzo, which is also said to be inhabited by a capre. A capre is basically like about 14 feet tall, and the key informants of San Lorenzo said that they are whiskered human-like and they smoke cigars. So that's it. Now let me go to non-narrative waterlord. There's five on Palhi and three on Mariit. So the words that are kept on repeated is if the land is dangerous, it is more so at sea. Kung Mariit sa takas, masobrang sa lawod. And if the land is cursed, the sea is much more so. Kung palhi ang takas, mas palhi pagid ang lawod. So these are sayings which I need to explain to you that mariit or the uncanny is a term used when you go to a location and natural objects that because of their connections to the supernatural, you have this feeling of dread. Daw nahadlo ka, you have this fear, parang natatakot ka. You say, oh, that place is mariit. There's something that makes my hair stand on end. I'm not going there. The similarity with Palhi is the same. Likewise, that place is to be avoided or shunned because the presence of the supernatural. But mariit, uncanny, personal danger, all right? Palhi is a feeling of being accursed or doomed. You're not going to that place and part of the sea because there's going to be a spell. And you have to stay out of it because of the presence of the supernatural. Another meaning of Palhi is when you are disrespectful of the unwritten laws of the sea, such as keeping silent while fishing or in the presence of strange creatures. So, Palhi is also a noun that means a holy place where offerings are made to inhabitants of the spirit world. And so, these two emerge as the core categories, the Mariit and the Palhi, for the water lore worldviews of the Guimaras Nons. And what does this mean? They evoke either fear or awe, the supernatural legends and folk speech. These sociocultural prescriptions, they need to do these things, the sociocultural prescriptions, to negate the consequences of Mariit and Palhi so that they will not be doomed, they will not be accursed. They need to perform the social cultural prescriptions, and these same prescriptions defined how they were able to conserve and protect marine resources in their MPAs using these prescriptions. Okay, what are these five prescriptions? One, throwing coins to ensure a good catch. Two, paying taxes or burwisan. Three, panabi-tabi by throwing coins. Four, fishing diplomacy. And five, throwing back the fish alive so they can spawn some more. So, social cultural prescription number one. Each community with an MPA has a key informant sharing that it is a practice to throw coins at sea so that they can get more catch. This would be like a payment to the sea for more harvest of bounties, similar to a burwisan or tax, so that of Nueva Valencia, so that they are safe from the big waves. Now, the second one, sorry about this red font. I don't know what happened. Um, Sociocultural prescription number two, as you can see here, a fisherman is throwing coins, still throwing coins. They throw it, and the throwing of coins at the sea is called burwisan or buwisan. Burwisan, by the way, is also the name of the place. And why was it named? Because it has big waves. Because it has big waves, they've already experienced several fishermen drowning because of it. So they would throw coins as a form of tax so that the spirits in that particular area would ensure them of safe travel. Social cultural prescription number three is panabi-tabi, or the act of asking permission from the sea spirits that the fishermen be allowed to pass, especially if the area, according to informant TV Garancio, is uncanny, like a cave near the shore of the sea. So in Iloilo, we have tabi-tabi. So this is a common thing which I am sure you have all heard of. Then number four, fishing diplomacy with the taglugar. This is some sort of give and take where the fishermen gave the taglugar a share of their fish catch as some sort of offering to exchange for safety at sea. So they would be in the boat, and then the first catch, they would throw it back like that. So it's some sort of ritual. And finally, number five, the Gimurasnoms will throw back the first catch. As I said, one is not only out of respect for the sea, but also because it's attracting luck and getting more blessings. Another reason is so that fish that is thrown back could spawn some more. That's the good news for fishing conservationists. So this worldview that this we belong to the spirit world is a the worldview of the sea resources actually belonging to the spirit world is a regulating factor that encourages sustainable development for coastal resources. And here is my theory of water lore worldviews in informing on NPA conservation. Majority of the supernatural legends and folk speech revolved on stories that evoke either fear, awe, or respect of uncanny, and accursed locations or objects that resulted in socio-cultural prescriptions to negate the consequences of the Palhi and the Mariit. This in turn defined how the Guimaras fisher folk conserved and protected their MPAs, and thus generated from the water lore data from the four selected communities with MPAs is the theory of water lore worldviews informing on MPA conservation. This theory works on the principle of rationalization via social and cultural prescriptions, where their water lore show that the key informants perceive parts of the water on some islands around the Guimaras MPAs as uncanny and accursed. They also rationalize that those spirit beings that control the waters and the weather can be entreated to make the elements more accessible for fishing. The worldview of collective ownership enforces the unwritten law binding the supernatural and humans that land and sea resources should not be misused, or else humans face the consequences that come with meddling with what is uncanny and accursed in the environment. As a self regulating factor, entrenched in folkloric traditions, the theory of water lore worldviews informing an MPA conservation is seen as an effective tool for the protection and conservation of the environment. Thank you very much. If you have questions regarding my presentation, I am very much willing to answer them. Sir, yes?
Hello po. Yes, yes po. Thank you for
Pasok ako sa
such
30
a
minutes na.
oh, thank you for such a great presentation po. Hopefully let me just remove. I'm trying to remove the.
Uh,
Hopefully, the audience po have picked up a lot of things about your presentation, and it's really worth sharing. Just for the awareness of many people po our different folklores about our different beliefs on kwan po, on our Philippine folklores. So there's a question here that we have. Let me just post it. There you go. Is there any religious ritual to stop unfortunate events? Sabi po nila, what are they po?
okay. Uh, let's make a definition between a religious ritual and a social-cultural prescription. A social-cultural prescription is more of a community-based uh, activity or a belief that, hey guys, this is what we're going to do. Kasi itong nangyayari sa atin ngayon. So, yung pagtuthrow ng coins is a practice way back from their elders to appease whoever is making the waves angry. Now, for the religious ritual, that would have to include prayers. Maybe it would have to include certain use of ritual materials such as candles. In social cultural prescriptions, you don't find candles, but you would find something like washing of. They use tanglad, lemongrass, to wash out the smell of pawikans. That's a different social cultural prescription on the animal tails. I did not include it here because the animal tails had nothing to do much with Mariit and Palhi. Mariit and Palhi was supernatural. So, in terms of religious ritual, the to stop unfortunate events, the only one that I found but was not included in my study is padugo. You know what it is? They kill a chicken, cut off its neck, let the blood drip, and let it drip around the new motorboat or the new bangka. That's about it. So that the bangka, when it goes out to sea, will be protected by whatever spirit is supposed to protect it. Because padugo is not a Christian ritual, it's a pagan ritual which goes from way, way back. So that is the nearest to a religious ritual to stop unfortunate events. But in the uh, non-narrative literature, nothing of that sort was said. I just simply read it somewhere. Yeah.
Okay, and then there's another question here po. Have you ever had experience with the type of supernaturals you mentioned in your presentation?
Yes, yes, I have. Surprisingly, yes. Okay. We went to this place because I needed to talk to a key informant who was very knowledgeable about the supernatural. His name was Tiwi Garancho. Tiwi, Manong Tiwi is about 67 or so. He's a thin, wiry fisherman. Everybody knows him. And this, the storyteller of the village. So I told my crew, come over, because when I do the audio, I talk to TV. This has to be, covered with a video because the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, which funded my study, needed the videos for whatever the reasons are. So, fine. We had been talking for a long time, and then I said, how's the audio? How's the video? When they finally looked at it, oh my God, nothing's coming out. What do you mean nothing's coming out? Don't tell me I'm going to repeat all of that over again. We had no choice. We had to. So, video again. I said, wait a minute. Is it working? No, it's not. And so I said, let's go transfer to some other place. We transferred a bit further. I said, it's still not working. But I said before we came over, it was working, right? Take note. All of our gadgets, mine, my cameraman, and my boy Friday's gadgets were all not working. So I said, Kiwi, we're talking about the supernatural. What the heck is happening here? And then he said, wait, let me tell my friends we are friends. As I tell you the story now, my hair is standing on end. And he said, okay, guys. I won't even say it like this. Okay, guys, these are friends. Don't worry, they're friends. I'm just talking to them about you, okay? So now my hair is really standing on end. I'm telling you all about this. So, and the other experience was, sir, I told you I was there for 10 days, right?
Yes.
On the ninth day, guess what happened? We got stranded. There was a typhoon. It was signal number one, but my God, it was so strong.
Oh,
And
wow.
the water started rising, and I'm like, wow, I don't want to be caught here. So, uh, but I had the feeling we were protected that time. And actually, Sir Alan and Mom Andre, I'm glad I'm deaf. You know why? And I can't see well because I actually wear eyeglasses. Hear no evil, see no evil. Because if I had good hearing and had good eyesight, I tell you, I'll be freaked out. So, and these are just some of the things that I experienced while doing it. But I'd like to believe they had a term for it. Dapat maisog imo dungan. When we say dungan, you're, I, Ma'am Andre, what is it in English? Your spiritual resolve. Because you'll be going against, evil spirits there. So you know
Yes.
how some Filipinos would put ginger on their clothes?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
we do that here in
Our
Palhi, right?
Filipino customs and traditions. Yes po.
Mm. So yeah, but basically my personality is very dominant and strong. So they could not easily sway me because this is what the gatekeepers were saying. Oh, you're going to that Mariit Palhi place. Be careful. The spirits might just do something to you there. Hey, have you heard of that in Philippine rural areas? When you go to a Mariit place, you didn't ask permission, you didn't say tabi-tabi, you get out of it full of sores, allergies, you're sick, etc.
Yes po.
And then you have to go
We
to a surhano
I
or a
think
shaman to get cured.
that's a Filipino custom po na if you go to some place where you should say tabi-tabi. Sir
Yeah,
Alan, how about you? Have you heard about that when you were still small?
I actually I have heard about it po, yung mga our own, uh, mga matatanda sa amin noon, they would constantly talk about that kasi kung may mga ano ba yun, parang small mound na
yes.
maliit, sabi nila
Bungsod,
daw
bungsod. Ano yun? Anong sa Tagalog yun? Yung bungsod
parang
yung
nuno sa
punso.
punso.
Punso, nuno sa
Punso,
punso.
oo, opo.
No,
And
no,
then
sa punso, yes.
yeah,
That's
they
the
would tell
most
me that.
common.
But I mean, sa akin po when I was young, I always did not I've I've never really believed in it, and then we always play around that area, and then
Yes,
yeah, we
yes.
always
We
go
always
all
pray
right.
around it. There's many
Oh,
things you can do. Holy water, rosary, ginger, whatever. Look, the holy rosary, the ginger, and whatever takes away your anxiety is already called a socio-cultural prescription. Because your lola
oh,
said so, di ba?
Oh,
yeah.
Your
yes.
mama said so. So that's already a comforting prescription for you to do because that's what the rest of the barangay does when they're afraid. Because
Oh,
basically, communities, Filipino or not, especially those that face dangers on an almost daily basis, they all have social cultural prescriptions. Not because they actually work, but it makes you feel better. It takes out your anxieties. That's the purpose
yeah.
of a social cultural prescription, actually.
Yung
Just
kwan
a
po,
question.
my experience with that is one time, and I included this in the new book that I'm writing, yung kwan po on my children's book na me and my friend were playing sa mound na gano'n, and then ta's inapak-apakan namin yung mound, and then later on yung, the what they call this, the ants started coming out.
Oh,
It's an
oh, oh, oh.
Opo.
anthill.
And then we were just like, rattled, not because of the, yun nga sinasabi nila nanuno sa punso, but it was because of the ants, biting our legs all over.
Minsan, di ba, we use the supernatural as an excuse for why we got sick, right?
Yes. That
Oo.
is
That
so
I
Like,
think
true.
the
example, we've got
Filipino trait.
osteoarthritis.
Yeah.
Then you'd say, "Oh, I stepped on a mound that had some
Amount.
sort of bunot
Yes.
sa punso there, di ba, Ma'am Andre?" That
Yes.
happens. Or you have a
That's true.
headache, and then people will say, and then you would say, "Actually, you have a migraine," but you would like to explain it by saying, "Oh, some spirit actually passed by my head, and I felt the wind really
Or
blowing."
Yes.
meron pa yung mga
Because
nausog.
I was under
Ganun.
this very supernatural tree. I was under a dol tree or a ficus tree. So,
Yeah.
Yes po.
Meron
Marami
pa yung mga
tayong
masakit ang tiyan, and then they will say,
yes,
yung mga bata 'pag masakit
nausog,
ang tiyan daw po,
nausog,
nausog, sabi po nila, yung mga bata, when they have like a tummy ache.
ano ka mo,
nausog
sir?
ka. Nausog,
Oo.
nausog.
Nausod. Yes, yes. Nausog. Yeah.
Oo, opo. We have one more question here po, and I think this will be the last question. When do you expect to publish this research?
Um, I finished it in 2019, but my contract with the National Commission for Culture and the Arts of the Philippines requires that they have to be the one to publish in the journal. I submitted it this year and it has yet to come out. We hope that by the end of the year it comes out. When it does come out, I will let you know via online. I think they're publishing it online as well because there's lots of people waiting for it, like the University of Hawaii, Ma'am Andre, the one where you found me speaking, and other
Yes.
people are waiting for the results as well. On the works is a book that I'm preparing with illustrations of what these 89 variants of the supernatural look like.
Wow.
Yes, which I think is very interesting. That is more on the layman side, something on the infotainment side, but I'm also more concerned with the critical discourse, critical folklore side of how folklore, I mean, it's rarely that you get to connect literature with actual conservation of marine resources. And I would like to believe that I'm the only scholar um, in the world focusing on this particular thing. um,
Yes.
Water
Yeah.
lore in connection to conservation of marine resources. So I'm quite happy with this contribution to knowledge because it's something very, very different.
That's
Yes.
great po. That's really good. And we need something like that for us to understand our culture, for us to be able to see more of. I mean, we need researchers like you po who will who shares to us things that we cannot really see. I mean, in as far as research are concerned, we need more research materials in general in the
Yes.
Philippines. I think that's very important for us to continue to have, what do you call this, backups on our history, lalong-lalo po for future generation. Hopefully, we kind of gain more traction into more people reading research materials, and lalong-lalo na po sa mga kabataan po ngayon
Yes.
na mga estudyante. Anyways po, ma'am, thank you so much, Ma'am Andre. Do you have any other
Welcome.
question,
No
Ma'am
po, I
Andre?
think all answered na po ni Ma'am Hazel. Thank
Nice,
you so
nice.
much.
Ma'am, we'd like to present to you our. Thank you for Ma'am Andre. She was able to prepare this certificate for you. We'd like to present to you this certificate po of recognition. Just remove our banner here. Hide this. Our certificate of recognition po, to Dr. Hazel P. Villa, to recognize her generous participation as a guest in our event, Colecteratura season 3. we are already in season 3. We will update that kwan po, that certificate. Episode 10, ang Palhi Mariit. Um, I hope I pronounced that right.
Yes po.
Opo. Signed this day of May 23, 2022. Ma'am Hazel, thank you very much for your time and thank you very
Welcome.
much for
Yes.
this opportunity that we had with you po.
Yes po, Ma'am Hazel, salamat po talaga. And
Awesome.
for those teachers who are waiting for the Cultura Code, for the episode for Dr. Hazel Villa, the Cultura Code is KC632. Again, KC632. Go to Riverboy Studios, click events and surveys, and key in the possible answers to those questions, and you can get your certificates through your email. Maraming salamat po. And next week po, we have two events for this May, a convo with Dr. Robin Dia Rodriguez, and the documentaryo on May 28. So stay tuned po mga kapwa. Salamat po. Mga kakultura, mga kapwa. Thank you, Sir Alan. Thank you, Ma'am Hazel. Have a good night, good day po sa iyo dyan sa Washington. From Iloilo po, Ma'am Andre is here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you po, Ma'am Andre. By the way,
Bye.
tama po pala yung certificate. Season 2 pa lang po tayo.
Yes po.
Okay. Yes. Thank you po. Thank you, Ma'am Hazel. Thank you again. Okay, there we go. Have a great day po sa lahat. Have a great
Thank you
day.
po, Sir Alan. Bye-bye.